national security involving the ongoing, highly classified U.S. attacks targeting Houthi rebels in Yemen.
The U.S. launched a series of airstrikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen. President Trump now giving their backer, Iran, a new warning.
U.S. jets have struck these Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen since President Trump returned to the White House. U.S. officials say
when B-2 Spirit stealth bombers quietly took off from Diego Garcia and explosions shook the skies over Yemen, the world began to ask, is this the turning point in the long-running conflict between the United States and the Houthis? Why did Iran suddenly pull out its forces? And what triggered both the Houthis and Washington to signal a de-escalation at the same time? In this video, we'll uncover the hidden geopolitical calculations, the silent power plays, and a fragile ceasefire that may be concealing something far bigger beneath the surface. The escalating U.S. air campaign in Yemen. Since March, the United States has dramatically intensified its air operations against the Iran-aligned Houthi movement in Yemen, signaling a renewed and aggressive military posture in the region. Over 200 precision airstrikes have been conducted so far, many of them leveraging advanced surveillance, satellite imaging, and real-time targeting technologies. This sustained campaign reflects not only tactical military intent, but also broader geopolitical strategy aimed at reshaping dynamics in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In the most recent phase of operations, the U.S. carried out 10 high-impact airstrikes concentrated in 3 strategically critical regions: Sada, Al-Baida, also referred to as Alba, and the vital port city of Al-Hudaydah, Heda. These areas have long been strongholds of Houthi logistics and command infrastructure. Rather than indiscriminate attacks, the strikes targeted high-value military assets, including underground arms depots, command and control centers, and drone and missile assembly facilities. U.S. intelligence reports confirm that many of these facilities were deeply fortified or camouflaged, requiring specialized munitions such as bunker-buster bombs to effectively neutralize them. In Sada, considered the heartland of the Houthi movement, warehouses believed to store ballistic missile components and drone production units were struck with overwhelming force. Sada's mountainous terrain has long provided cover for hidden stockpiles, making it a focal point for U.S. air reconnaissance missions. The Al-Baida Governorate, known for its rugged topography and use as a natural weapons cache by Houthi forces, was also hit hard. Multiple subterranean storage bunkers, allegedly filled with explosives, anti-armor systems, and drone parts, were targeted in a move that analysts suggest may have involved stealth bombers, possibly B-2 Spirits, recently deployed to nearby Diego Garcia. The use of these aircraft would mark a significant strategic escalation, given their ability to penetrate deep into enemy territory undetected. Meanwhile, in Al-Hudaydah, a port city vital to the Houthis' maritime supply chains, airstrikes focused on crippling weapons depots and command hubs used to coordinate Red Sea operations. Houthi attacks on international shipping and U.S. naval vessels have largely been orchestrated from facilities in this area. By targeting these nodes, the U.S. aims to disrupt the logistical backbone of Houthi operations and restore freedom of navigation in this volatile corridor. This campaign is not merely about eliminating physical targets, it is also a signal of intent. With tensions escalating across the broader Middle East, Washington is keen on demonstrating that it will no longer tolerate threats to commercial shipping, regional allies, or its own military assets. The strategy also dovetails with the Biden administration's wider efforts to recalibrate America's deterrence posture, particularly in areas where Iranian influence looms large. However, beyond the tactical successes, the air campaign raises deeper questions about the endgame in Yemen. While these strikes have undoubtedly inflicted material damage on Houthi capabilities, observers warn that without a parallel diplomatic track or regional consensus, the long-term impact could be limited. History shows that non-state actors like the Houthis often adapt quickly, dispersing assets and embedding military operations deeper within civilian infrastructure, complicating future targeting efforts. Nevertheless, the current wave of strikes represents a decisive phase in the U.S. military's evolving strategy in Yemen. What began as limited retaliation for Red Sea attacks has transformed into a broader effort to dismantle the Houthis' warfighting infrastructure, and perhaps to tilt the balance of power in Yemen's long, grinding conflict. Strategic firepower and the expanding arc of deterrence. In a powerful demonstration of force projection, the United States has deployed a formidable naval and aerial presence across key maritime choke points in the Middle East. The USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group is now en route to the Persian Gulf, set to reinforce operations already underway by the USS Harry S. Truman, which has been stationed in the Red Sea, conducting maritime security and power projection missions. This dual carrier posture is far more than symbolic. It marks a deliberate escalation in U.S. force readiness and regional dominance, especially as tensions mount with both the Houthi insurgents and their Iranian backers. Aircraft carriers serve as mobile air bases, each capable of launching dozens of sorties per day, and their presence in overlapping theaters allows the U.S. to maintain persistent offensive reach from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. Perhaps even more telling is the recent dispatch of 6 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers to the remote Diego Garcia Air Base in the Indian Ocean, an isolated yet strategic outpost long utilized for deep penetration bombing campaigns. These aircraft are the crown jewels of the U.S. strategic bomber fleet, capable of carrying precision-guided munitions, including GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators, MOPS, designed specifically for bunker-busting operations. Unlike conventional bombers, the B-2's stealth profile allows it to bypass sophisticated radar systems and strike hardened or deeply buried enemy targets undetected. Defense analysts believe this deployment marks a shift from containment to direct preemptive deterrence, with the B-2s serving as a high-alert force ready to neutralize high-value assets anywhere across the Middle East within hours. The timing and location of the bomber's arrival coincide with a notable uptick in precision strikes in Alba, where underground weapons caches, missile production sites, and command bunkers belonging to the Houthis have been systematically targeted. The nature and depth of the targets, reportedly buried beneath rocky highlands, strongly suggest the use of penetrating ordnance, which is well within the specialized capabilities of the B-2's payload suite. This combination of naval and aerial might not only delivers immediate tactical superiority, but also redefines the strategic balance in a region where asymmetric threats, like drone swarms, ballistic missiles, and guerrilla-style insurgencies, have long challenged conventional military paradigms. The U.S. message is clear. Any actor threatening the freedom of navigation in international waters or endangering American personnel and allies will be met with decisive, overwhelming force. Moreover, the use of stealth bombers in this theater sends a direct signal to Tehran, whose military support for the Houthis has drawn increasing scrutiny from U.S. and allied intelligence agencies. The current posture effectively places Iranian command and logistics nodes within potential strike range, further complicating Tehran's calculus and tightening the pressure around its network of regional proxies. Damage assessment of Houthi capabilities and U.S. intelligence challenges. Recent U.S. airstrikes have delivered significant blows to the Houthi military infrastructure, dismantling key elements of their strike capacity. High-value targets, such as ballistic missile depots, drone component warehouses, and coastal launch sites used for Red Sea operations, have been methodically targeted and, in many cases, obliterated. These locations were integral to the Houthis' ability to disrupt maritime trade and threaten U.S. and allied naval forces navigating the region's heavily trafficked waters. Despite these operational victories, the Pentagon continues to grapple with a major blind spot: accurate and up-to-date intelligence regarding the true scale and survivability of the Houthis' remaining arsenal. According to multiple defense officials, the decentralized nature of the group's logistics, combined with the rugged terrain of northern Yemen, makes it extremely difficult to obtain a comprehensive picture of their stockpiles. Weapons are often hidden in mobile or underground caches, and their relocation is regularly disguised by civilian activity. The 2024 Declassified Intelligence Assessment offers some insight into the nature of the Houthis' military capabilities. It confirms that the group's weaponry is heavily linked to Iranian defense technology, much of it smuggled in through clandestine networks involving the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Among the most concerning components are long-range suicide drones, notably the Samadhi series, which boast flight ranges exceeding 1,100 miles and payload capacities capable of inflicting significant structural damage. These UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, are not just battlefield tools. They represent a growing asymmetric threat to U.S. bases, ships, and regional partners. Their low radar signature and GPS guidance systems make them ideal for surprise attacks, particularly against naval targets or energy infrastructure. In addition to the drone fleet, the Houthis maintain a variety of short to medium-range ballistic missiles, some bearing structural and functional similarities to Iran's Shahab 3 series. Analysts believe these could strike U.S. assets across the Gulf region, or even reach Israeli airspace under certain conditions. Anti-ship ballistic missiles, such as the IF system, reportedly modeled on Iranian prototypes, also add another layer of complexity, posing a direct challenge to freedom of navigation in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb Strait. However, the full extent of these capabilities remains shrouded in uncertainty. Intelligence agencies acknowledge that the Houthis have proven adept at reconstituting their military assets, often sourcing new components through black market supply chains or improvised production methods. Their survival under years of Saudi-led bombardment has demonstrated a resilience that complicates conventional threat assessments. This lack of precise visibility raises broader strategic concerns for Washington. If the U.S. underestimates the group's retained capabilities or fails to interdict future Iranian arms transfers, the Houthis may retain enough firepower to prolong the naval standoff and inflict periodic damage, especially as tensions in the region escalate. In short, while recent airstrikes have crippled key elements of the Houthi war machine, the intelligence gap regarding their deeper arsenal and production capacity underscores a persistent challenge. Degrading a networked insurgent force that blends foreign backing, local adaptability, and unconventional warfare tactics. The battle for Yemen's skies may be visible, but the war for accurate intelligence remains very much in the shadows. Iran's involvement and strategic retrenchment. Since 2009, Iran has played a central, albeit shadowy role in shaping the military trajectory of the Houthi movement in Yemen. Through its elite military arm, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Tehran has provided the Houthis with a robust package of military aid, including advanced weapon systems, combat training, logistical guidance, and real-time intelligence support. This patron-client relationship was part of Iran's broader strategy to cultivate proxy forces across the region as a way to project influence and encircle regional rivals like Saudi Arabia. The Houthi insurgency presented a perfect strategic foothold for Iran, a non-state actor operating near one of the world's most vital maritime choke points, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and willing to challenge Western and Gulf-aligned powers. Over the years, Iranian advisors helped enhance the Houthis' combat effectiveness, particularly in asymmetric warfare, missile deployment, and drone operations. Intelligence shared by the IRGC reportedly allowed Houthi forces to strike targets with greater precision, from oil facilities in Saudi Arabia to commercial shipping lanes in the Red Sea. However, the calculus in Tehran began to shift dramatically in early 2024. Mounting pressure from the United States, spurred by repeated Houthi attacks on U.S. Navy assets and international shipping, prompted Washington to launch its largest military escalation in the Middle East in years. Faced with the very real possibility of being drawn into a direct confrontation with U.S. forces, Iran took the extraordinary step of withdrawing its military personnel from Yemen. This decision marked a significant turning point. For the first time in over a decade, Tehran began to scale back its overt military footprint, not due to diplomatic resolution, but as a tactical retreat to minimize the risk of broader conflict. According to sources cited by Iranian media, the rationale behind this withdrawal was to avoid any scenario in which an Iranian operative might be killed by a U.S. strike, an incident that could ignite a spiral of escalation neither side was prepared to absorb. Inside Iran's national security apparatus, recent meetings have been dominated by concern over President Donald Trump's unpredictability and hawkish posture. According to leaked accounts from senior Iranian officials, strategic planners in Tehran now see Trump as the single most dangerous variable in the regional equation. The shift in tone has been stark. Previously routine discussions around regional proxy activity have been shelved, replaced by emergency sessions focused almost exclusively on countering Trump's military threats and coercive diplomacy. While Iran's ideological commitment to resistance across the region remains intact, its decision to temporarily step back from the Yemen theater suggests a recognition of new limits. Tehran has long relied on plausible deniability and third-party warfare to challenge its adversaries. But the Trump administration's shift toward linking Houthi attacks directly to Iran and threatening retaliation against Iranian territory has raised the stakes considerably. This realignment illustrates a broader truth about Iranian foreign policy. Its proxy strategy is fluid, not fixed. When the costs of engagement outweigh the benefits, particularly when facing a U.S. president who has shown a willingness to authorize high-stakes military actions, as seen in the 2020 killing of Qasem Soleimani, Iran is willing to adjust. The departure of Iranian trainers and Revolutionary Guard advisors from Yemen does not necessarily mean Tehran is abandoning the Houthis entirely, but it does signal a recalibration driven by the imperatives of survival, deterrence, and long-term strategic patience. In essence, Iran's retreat is not just a tactical move, it's a concession to geopolitical reality, shaped by overwhelming U.S. firepower, diplomatic isolation, and the unpredictability of Washington's current leadership. For now, Iran seems content to preserve its regional assets by quietly disengaging, rather than risking a catastrophic miscalculation in Yemen. Signs of de-escalation: a fragile pause. Between the Houthis and the U.S. In a rare moment of potential de-escalation, a senior Houthi official publicly signaled the group's willingness to halt attacks on U.S. naval vessels, but only on the condition that Washington suspends its ongoing air campaign in Yemen. This conditional ceasefire offer marks one of the clearest acknowledgments to date that the Houthis are feeling the weight of sustained American military pressure. On the other side, the United States has responded with cautious openness, with both President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth indicating that if the Houthis cease their hostilities, particularly their maritime aggression, the U.S. would be prepared to pause its air operations. This reciprocal signaling suggests that both parties are exploring a tactical pause in hostilities, not necessarily out of goodwill, but likely due to shifting calculations of military risk and strategic cost. The ceasefire officially took effect on January 19th, and initial reports confirmed that the Houthis temporarily suspended attacks on U.S. ships transiting the Red Sea. However, this fragile lull remains contingent on continued restraint from both sides. American analysts have warned that while such truces can offer short-term relief, they often prove unstable without a broader framework addressing root causes, such as Iran's support network, Houthi weapons capacity, and the regional contest for influence. Nonetheless, the current pause, however tentative, offers a glimpse into the possibility of controlled conflict management, even in a theater as volatile as Yemen. For now, the skies have quieted, but the question remains: is this merely a tactical breather, or the first step toward a longer-term recalibration in U.S. Houthi dynamics? Humanitarian collapse and growing civilian discontent. Yemen today stands on the edge of total socioeconomic collapse, with the humanitarian situation deteriorating at an alarming rate. Over the past decade, the Yemeni rial has lost more than 90% of its value, rendering basic goods unaffordable for the vast majority of the population. This devastating currency devaluation, driven by years of war, corruption, and competing fiscal policies in the north and south, has crippled purchasing power and decimated public sector wages. Both government-controlled regions and territories under Houthi rule are reeling from humanitarian crises of unprecedented proportions. In these zones, food insecurity, lack of clean water, and the breakdown of healthcare infrastructure are widespread. Aid workers face near impossible conditions, arbitrary arrests, movement restrictions, and even physical threats. International organizations, including the UN and Red Cross, have raised alarms over blocked humanitarian convoys, politicized distribution of relief, and deliberate obstruction by local authorities, particularly in areas governed by the Houthis. The frustration among ordinary Yemenis is palpable and deepening. Civilians are increasingly disillusioned with the Houthi leadership, which continues to prioritize military aggression, particularly attacks on U.S. naval vessels in the Red Sea, over the well-being of the people it claims to represent. In the eyes of many, the Houthis' obsession with a foreign confrontation has come at the direct expense of addressing widespread poverty, hunger, and displacement. This disconnect between the leadership's militarized agenda and the daily suffering of the population is fueling silent dissent, and in some areas, open rejection. As economic desperation worsens and international aid remains choked by political constraints, many Yemenis are now left with a grim choice: endure unbearable conditions or flee their homeland in search of stability elsewhere. Escape routes and the Houthi contingency strategy. As the military situation in Yemen deteriorates and U.S.-led airstrikes intensify, an increasing number of Yemenis, both civilians and militant affiliates, are seeking ways to flee the conflict zone. The southern port city of Aden, once a commercial hub, has now become a critical departure point for those hoping to escape the escalating violence. From here, two primary destinations have emerged: Oman and Somalia. For many, Oman represents a safe and politically neutral haven. Unlike its Gulf neighbors, Oman has consistently refrained from military intervention in the Yemeni civil war. Its long-standing policy of quiet diplomacy and neutrality has earned it a unique status, both among humanitarian actors and notably within the Houthi leadership. The Houthis are said to view Oman not just as a geographic escape route, but as a strategic buffer, where future negotiations or exiled coordination may take place with minimal interference. Meanwhile, across the Gulf of Aden, Somalia has also re-emerged as a potential refuge. Despite its own internal challenges, Somalia has received waves of Yemeni refugees in the past and maintains deep historical and cultural ties with parts of southern Yemen. Intelligence sources now suggest that small fishing vessels, shipping containers, and unregistered boats are being used to ferry not only desperate civilians, but possibly high-ranking Houthi commanders and Iranian military advisors attempting to discreetly exit the battlefield. The stealthy nature of these maritime movements reflects a broader shift in strategy. As battlefield losses mount and international scrutiny tightens, the Houthis and their backers appear to be preparing fallback options beyond Yemen's borders, not only to evade direct confrontation, but potentially to preserve command structures for future insurgency or negotiation leverage. In the smoke of airstrikes and the silence of withdrawn forces, we're left with a sobering truth. Even the fiercest wars eventually reach a point where power alone is not enough. Behind every drone strike and military maneuver lies a deeper battle for influence, survival, and control over narratives. The temporary ceasefire may hold or it may collapse, but one thing is clear: Yemen has become more than a battlefield. It's a mirror reflecting the fragile balance of global power. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think this fragile pause marks the beginning of peace or just a calm before the next storm?